Hey everybody, Chris Avalon here. Thank you for joining me for another recap episode of Pose Season 1, which was the 7th episode, which was called Pink Slip. Of course, I got my pink top on to talk about the little Pink Slip episode, which started out with us getting a lot more backstory on Lil Papi and where he's been coming from and what's been going on with him and stuff. So I actually liked the fact that we got to know him more because I felt like throughout this season we really didn't get to know like what he was about, where he was from, a lot of his whole backstory. So I love the fact in this episode we got to know a little bit more about him. So this episode starts off with basically everybody's about to go off, you know, to live out their day and go ahead and do what they're supposed to be doing in regards to like how they're going to start off their day. Basically, that's what they were doing. So Poppy leaves, forgets his pager. Blanca discovers he has a pager, and then when he comes back to look for it, she starts to question him on why exactly does he need a pager. So he lies, but then she kind of gets this idea that he could possibly either be selling drugs or using drugs. So she gives him this cutthroat ultimatum, but basically was like, if you're selling drugs, I want you out of my house. So he convinces her, I guess for the moment, that he is not a drug dealer, which she doesn't believe him, but we'll get into that later on. So then we go from that scene to Mr. Ford, who I will always be, Christopher Maloney, Detective Stabler, Mr. Ford, whatever you want to call him. He, 2 months after his last encounter with Elektra, he comes back to the room and he's ready to like get some of that good old chocolate penis, but then discovers while they're kissing and they're feeling each other up and they're doing their thing that Elektra went and got bottom surgery, which pretty much sends him into a tailspin. He immediately cuts her off and is like, I told you when we first met that these were the rules of that this was basically the terms of our agreement. Now, I understand that Elektra wanted to feel whole and she wants to feel like she's a woman and she thought that the grass would be greener on the other side because she's a girl and she's gorgeous and this, that, and the other. But she needed to realize, and it's unfortunate, I understand like with the trans community and how you guys feel like, oh, I don't feel complete unless I have a dick. But it says, a pussy. But it says something also like, I remember watching Paris is Burning and a lot of the girls who, were augmented and had things, they were saying, you know what, a lot of these girls, they tend to go and think just because they get a pussy that, things will change for them, that people will take them seriously, that they'll be complete, that they'll be a woman. And, they'll feel on the inside as they look on the outside. But when you are at the mercy of men who have money and power and basically looking at you as nothing more than a damn fetish, and this is a way that you get to use that money that you're getting, the power that the power is in your genitalia, apparently. It's unfortunate, but this is the way the cookie crumbles, is that when you have this situation where you have this power in your hands and you don't want to, and the guys that you're with is like, yeah, they're using you, but you're using them too. Like, you're getting expensive gifts, you're getting all this money, you have this fabulous apartment that you're living in, that you can basically take care of yourself and the children that you basically having living in your household. That's where your power is. But once you cut away at your power, what do you have? So we started to begin to see this downward spiral of Elektra losing everything because she went and got the surgery. So yeah, as long as these men have the control where they have the money and they have this, that, and the other, you don't really have much of a leg to stand on. Okay, I will also say this. I know a lot of people have had complaints about Dominique Ross's acting as Elektra throughout the season. I have too. It felt like a lot of time, like she over enunciates every word, and she tends to. It could be a bit overacting, but I get it because it kind of gives you that whole soap opera vibe. I do feel like she don't have to overpronounce every word and this, that, and the third. But to me, I felt like her acting was slightly better in the scene where she was showing vulnerability between her and Mr. Ford. But Then after that, when she went back to the house of Evangelista and started with the typical, the over dramatizing of the dialogue and stuff, I was like, girl, you're taking us back. Like, come on. Like, but I'm hoping with us getting a season 2, that the show's been greenlit last week, in case you've been living under a rock. I'm hoping like with the second season that Dominique will be in some acting classes and get her a coach and figure out like, okay, girl, like you don't need to relax a bit, like bring it down a couple of notches. I understand when you need to get to those certain levels, but I need her to show a little bit more range. So, I understand it's your first season. Look, Will Smith wasn't a fucking one of the best actors when he first started. He was a hot ass mess when he was on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. When you watch them earlier seasons, you'll see, but he learned to get better. Dwayne Johnson too. I mean, even though he does the same goddamn role over and over, at least over the years, he has gotten better with his acting. So with enough practice, I truly believe she'll get better. The scene where Blanca interrogated the children, at the house of Abundant, was it the House of Evangelista? Why am I saying Abundance? I don't know. They're in my head. But the House of Evangelista, when she started interrogating them and nobody bit. Like, Angel did not snitch. Damon didn't snitch. But then Ricky goes and didn't even hesitate to fucking snitch. I mean, not to deny the situation. Pissed me off, even though I knew it was coming. But it was like, big ass fucking mouth. But then we start to learn later on that, to me, him snitching was out of spite, and he used the excuse of, well, you went and said that I'm a hit it and quit it type. Like, you really letting that shit go, like, be the reason, especially when you've been living in that house for as long as you've been living? Because I don't know, the timeline jumps. That's another problem I have with the show too. Y'all be jumping these damn timelines. Like, I don't even know what year we're in at this point. I think we're in 1988. Show started out in 1987, but like, you go from one episode, the next week is like New Year's, and it's Christmas, and then it's Valentine, like Mother's Day. So it's like, it's been, the scenes have been kind of jumping all over the place. So it's hard for me to keep up with the timeline. But I'm assuming we're in 1988 now. One of the things I was thinking was just that, like, how when Ricky goes and snitches on Papi, it was just like annoying, because to me it just felt like, you know what? Even though if he was saying all this other stuff and you were saying, well, yeah, I'm not going to go back out on the street for you, so it's better you than me. Like, to me, it's like, if you're a family, you're supposed to stick up for your family no matter what. And it was unfortunate that Ricky did that out of spite, and I was pissed off at him, and I'm glad the rest of the house was pissed off. And I really felt that Blanca, even though I understood her intentions behind why she was so hard on Papi, I feel like she was a little too harsh, because I totally get what it's like when, you're trying to do the best you can. You're trying to do what you got to do to take care of yourself. And it's not easy being a person of color. And well, I don't know. Papi is just Papi. He did say he let a couple of guys suck his dick every now and again. But when you're a person of color and you're LGBT and you have, as he stated, an 8th grade education, and he's 20 years old, and he can't really go out and get a job because he doesn't have an education, the least what you could do is like, okay, let's see if we can get you in some classes to learn, like, to possibly get a GED, even though a GED is so much harder than getting a high school diploma. At least try to help him get his education together, or try to help him get his life together, where he can go out and try to get a good, it's hard to get a good job, like, with an 8th grade education, or, but just like show him the way on how he can make it in this world, instead of being like, well, if you're gonna sell drugs, you're gonna get out of my house. Like, Blanca sounded so much like my fucking mother in that situation. And the fact of the matter, where you just have this ultimate, you think you're doing the right thing, but it's like, but what are you doing to help your kid get to where they need to get to? Like, you're thrown out in the street, and you have to figure out, where do you go from there, or how do you maneuver in this world? And it's not easy, but being on your own since you're 13, you trying to figure out what you're doing, and how he basically went from selling weed to selling crack, basically to to take care of himself, was just getting that sense of realism. And I just thought it was a relatively good scene. Yeah, this episode wasn't as crazy, as dramatic as all the previous ones, but I did like that it just had this whole down home feel to it, where it's like we can get to know Papi on a more intimate level. So I just like the fact that we got to see his character branch out more in this episode. Okay, so Angel and Stan, because, last week's episode, Stan got kicked out of the house with the wife after the asshole James Vanderbeek basically snitched and was like, your husband's having an affair. And then she finds out that the girl was trans. Y'all see, if y'all didn't see last week's episode, it's up on the site or whatever, on YouTube. And then them two basically having this whole setting together and then trying to make it work within each other. And Stan wanting to see the world that Angel is from. So kind of being introduced into that world of like the ballroom and seeing that whole world and seeing how she lives and how she snatches trophies and all other stuff. That was just really cool to see on his part. And then when they go, him realizing that it was overwhelming for him, basically. Like, seeing all these girls, like, the vultures was coming around and trying to snatch him up. Or, the kids throwing shit. That's just a thing. These girls out here, everything's a situation with them. A lot of them got attitudes. A lot of them get so caught up in their bullshit. So, seeing him struggle in that and trying to fit in that world, especially since he's a wasp, basically. Trying to fit into this world where you're seeing a lot of urban queer kids migrating in this room and trying to basically, do what they do. It can become overwhelming for someone who's not from that world. So now, the downward spiral of Elektra and seeing how the House of Abundance, 2 months behind on their rent, getting evicted, the rest of the members of the House of Abundance trying to figure out what they're going to do financially or how they're going to survive and how they're going to take care of themselves. Was an interesting feat. I never know the Spanish girl's name because I don't know. Throughout this whole episode, I don't even think they mentioned her name once. But her and Candy, now I remember Candy because Candy been having some scenes and Candy shady as fuck. That's why I live for that bitch. But the other girl from the House of Abundance and Candy getting the idea of starting their own house, which was put in her head weeks ago because, a previous episode because of her conversation with Blanca, and she was trying to get her to come into the House of Evangelista, but she didn't do it. She stayed with the House of Abundance. But now that these bitches about to be homeless and they don't know what's going on because Elektra didn't pay the bill because she schemed her own family members out of their money that they stole from the Salvation Army, and then, taking all that extra money just to get a pussy, which we all realize, what is this vagina going to get you? Like, it hasn't gotten you anything. You've lost a lot of shit. So, being abandoned, Elektra being abandoned by her own house because they all had to figure out how they were going to survive. And then Elektra having to go to, she go into the Kit Kat bar, which is like basically a spot where the trans girls meet up with gentleman callers who basically are looking to have a little side something while they're either married or not married. But then the guy she met, he was like, his wife died in a boating accident. He probably killed her ass. That's what I was thinking when I saw that episode. I was thinking the whole Natalie Wood situation and the guy that Robert Wagner. I know this is before, like, I'm speaking old stuff, but that story came up recently. That's how I remember it. But it was like an old thing where he was an actor, she's an actress, she's from West Side Story, and then she wound up drowning and she couldn't swim, and everybody's kind of giving this conspiracy theory that he might have killed her, but there's no evidence. Like, it's just a whole lot. And Christopher Walken happened to be on the boat, and it's just a lot. But anyway, I thought he probably killed her. So, the girls from the House of Abundance meeting up and coming up with their own house at a bar, where they had Shannon's Let the Music play on in the background. That's my shit. I live for freestyle. I like that type of music. That was my shit. I had to rewind that scene 3 times because I was so caught up in the music and I wanted to pay attention to the conversation, but it was just like the music was just really getting to me. But yeah, coming with the name The House of Veracity. I was like, But if that's what y'all can come up with, because all the good ones is taken. You got the House of Extravaganza, the House of Ninja, the House of Mugler, like all the good names is taken. So you got to come up with something, I guess, House of Veracity. Should have been House of Dusty, tired ass bitches. But they wouldn't call them hoes that. That's just a mouthful. So, so the scene of Damon shading Ricky over Papi, I was living for it because, like I said, I was pissed off at Ricky. because he was basically looking out for himself, and I felt like he was just being selfish in that whole situation. And I did like the fact that Angel lit up into his ass too. Like Ricky was trying to take the nicer approach to it, but she came and slammed that door and cussed his ass out and told him about himself. So, and then of course Blanca, because that bitch lived for listening on a conversation. Her going to the door and basically just like listening to what was going on, and then her having that revelation of going to just have a conversation with Damon's teacher about parenting, and because even though she said she doesn't have any children, she wanted to get some advice on how is it that you can discipline your students, like her trying to find that middle ground on realizing that she may have been a little too harsh in her approach towards Papi and kicking him out and throwing him out in the street and him having to survive and figure out what the hell he's gonna do. So the scene where Stan and Angel wound up going to the ball and the category being intergalactic best dress, I was living for a lot of those costumes. It was giving me very much Lee Bowery and Club Kid and that whole vibe. I was living for it. But then, like I said earlier in when I was talking about those two, where Stan had the revelation that he was a little overwhelmed by this world and was realizing that, what, while it was a fun ride and I liked us being in this bubble that we had together, where it was just like that bubble kept us together because it was like I wanted more outside of this boring white Anglo-Saxon Protestant world in which I lived in. I wanted to see what your world was like and realize that it's a little too much. And I need to go back to what I'm familiar with. So, realizing the grass ain't greener, I guess is a good thing. But now it's like, okay, so now that you realize that, where do we go from here in regards to you trying to repair your marriage with Patty and getting that whole white picket fence life back that you so effortlessly crave? And I guess we'll learn that during next week's episode, which is the season finale. Blanca finally meeting up with Papi, I guess in the air. I don't know how she tracked his ass down, but she, ran into him, talked to him, tried to figure out, was like, okay, now that you've given up selling drugs, I want you to come back to the house. But then, of course, us realizing that Papi got his ass snatched up by the House of Veracity. So basically, he is going to be walking with them and working with them and that whole situation, and we'll see how that all plays out, I guess, in next week's episode of Pose. So, Elektra realizing she lost everything, where it was like when she went to the Kit Kat bar. I don't even think I even explained that one all the way, but now that we've come back up to it, I'll explain more. So she goes to the Kit Kat bar, meets this guy. Oh yeah, I did talk a little bit about it, but I forgot to end it or wrap it up. But Elektra meeting up with the white guy at the Kit Kat bar, like I said, he killed his wife. And then I knew it because I was like, this is the tea that's going to come. She came with all her terms, talking about, I want gifts and da-da-da. So it was the same shit, same game she ran on Mr. Ford. But when she put out that ad and the guy met up with her, it's like, if you knew what kind of establishment that was where you were trying to hook up with a rich white guy, you should have known the terms would be that if you're going to be this girl that he has never seen before, you're this tall, statuesque, beautiful black woman with flawless skin, gorgeous lips. The lace fronts was on point, but you need to have your man's toolbox between your legs. And when he said that every now and again, I want you to like pee on me, and she's like, well, I don't know how I'm gonna do that because I'm a full woman. And he was like, well, you should have established that when you put out your ad. So it's like she's starting to realize that, you know what, she regrets it. And that, look, at this point, there's no way you can reverse bottom surgery. That's why I think, like, if you're going to be trans and you're in a situation like an Elektra, you got to think long and hard about whether or not you want to get that surgery and if it's worth it. If your happiness is worth being financially supported, especially when in those days, and kind of sort of still, it is still difficult for people who are transgender to get a legitimate job in the workforce. So just got to think long and hard about it. So I was really feeling for Elektra in this episode, but then there was like, she was giving me back and forth because it was like, there was moments like, bitch, would you stop being so damn mean to your own damn house? But then I did feel for her because I saw like her going on this downward spiral, just losing it all in no time flat. And then the fact that when she went back to the hotel and she was trying to gather her things like her fur coats and this, that, and the other, and how immediately she was replaced. And the doorman was like, no, I can't let you in. And she saw the new competition, that how easily Mr. Ford replaced her with a younger, lighter girl who, so it just goes to show that, yes, these men, you are nothing but a fucking number to them. As long as you know what y'all's situation is, then you'll get on just fine in this world. But just know, like, once you change up some shit and you change up the rules, this is the price you're gonna have to unfortunately pay. So, Elektra losing everything and wound up working those same like the little booths like Angel's been doing where she was making her money. What else was she gonna do? I don't think she was gonna go on the corner and start selling herself. So she started going to making her money in the booths, and we'll see next week how that all turns out, because I saw like in the commercial she basically has a conversation with Blanca, and they basically, she's just like, I don't know what to do, I've lost it all, and that sort of thing. So, and then also, so it's like this whole episode just seemed like a lot of people just like, when you're in a good situation and then like one choice that you make in life, you could possibly lose it all. So it's like with Elektra losing it all because she wanted to be a complete woman and getting her bottom surgery. You have Papi, who lost it all because he made the decision of surviving by selling drugs, and it was a rule that Blanca was totally against in her house, and which resulted in one of her members getting snatched by another house. And then you had Angel, who pretty much lost it all because she took Stan into her world, and he realized that wasn't the world for him, so she lost the apartment. He basically cleared out everything, the furniture and all that other stuff, and left her a garbage bag of her stuff and a note. And then it resulted in her going back to work in the booths and work in the street corner, and her getting in that car with whatever that man was. I was like, child, don't end up like Venus Extravaganza, don't end up like found dead under a bed after a couple of days. So I'm hoping that that's not something that happens to her. But it's like, it's a risk every time you're going to get in the car, and you're going to have to deal with those things. So, because that man looked like the goddamn killer. But overall, I just felt like this was a really good show where it was just about decisions you're making in life and the possibility of losing it all. I'm really looking forward to next week's episode, and I'm just hoping that with the success of a show like Pose and where we're going with this, and the fact that FX gave this show another season to be bigger and better, and I'm hoping that we can move beyond 8 episodes, that I hope they can move it up to at least 10, and then maybe season 3 we can move it up to 13. Oh, excuse me. So I'm actually looking forward to this and seeing how this show wraps everything up. Overall, I thought it was a pretty good show. Yeah, it wasn't as wild and crazy and over the top as all the previous episodes, but this was very much a really good. It was a good episode for what it was, and I just like getting deeper into a lot of the characters a lot more. So I'm just looking to see how they all wrap up the season next Sunday. So I want to say thank you all for taking the time out to watch this episode recap of Pose, episode 7, entitled Pink Slip, which was co-written by Lady J. Yeah, and be sure to look out for any more shows. I mean, any more reviews and stuff I'm going to be doing. I'm probably going to be doing this week because Comic-Con is coming up. Probably going to be doing a lot of recaps and reviews of stuff that I see, because I'm not going to San Diego Comic-Con, but I will be discussing a lot of the stuff, hopefully, when they start posting a lot of the trailers, a lot of the Hall H Q&As of stuff. So the ones I'm really looking forward to, and I'm hoping they put up, is like for Halloween, a bunch of other movies that we have coming out, especially on the DC front. So definitely look out for that and a whole lot more. Please, if you like what you see, click subscribe, hit the bell so to let you know that I've uploaded some new videos. Also follow me on Twitter at Chris Avalon NYC, Instagram Chris Avalon Blog. Look me up on Facebook, say hi, and all the other stuff. And thank you all for watching, and love you guys.